Let us look at the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. The steady contemplation and meditation is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Yesterday, the Khenpos and Khenmos asked me whether they can make the Dharma offering of the recitation of this text. And I said, well, 37 shlokas are indeed too short as a Dharma offering. Well, I may ask you to recite it today. We'll see. I said no yesterday, but maybe I will ask you to make the recitation. People over here, you should be able to recite it, right? Let us continue a little bit more. Yesterday we studied this one stanza that's quoted by Chen Anhua, the stanza from the Madhyamika Avatara. He would practice and remember and recite this shloka very often as a way to remind himself that now he has freedom and favorable conditions. It is the best to use those freedom and conditions to engage in diligent practices. Otherwise, if we were to lose those situations and were to be reborn in the three lower realms, then we would have no way to save ourselves, and that would be very difficult for ourselves to be liberated. And then, having said that, he meditated. Puchonghua explained the following: having obtained the body of freedoms and riches, if one dies without having been virtuous, is like finding a priceless jewel and throwing it away without ever having enjoyed it. On the contrary, if one does evil, it's like exchanging a jewel for a piece of rotten food mixed with poison. This had also been taught in the letter of friend, where Nagarjuna also said something similar. If we were to practice diligently with this human body, then it is like gaining a priceless jewel. If we were to use this precious human body to practice the vice, then it is just like to use priceless gold to make a container to put poison in it. But nowadays, I think people don't really understand that. Now that we have this precious jewel, if we were to exchange this with maybe food or things like that, all the frivolous things, that would be very foolish. But not many people out of the 7 billion people in this whole world know what to uptake and what to reject. And then Potoa states, without letting this freedom and riches so difficult to attain and so easy to destroy go to waste, you must now give them meaning and make them perfect. For that reason, we need to practice and make the aspiration whatever we encounter. Whenever we have happiness or whenever we have obstacles, we will practice diligently in any situations. Karakpa also explains that when this precious human body with its freedoms and riches so difficult to obtain is attained, then without letting this attainment fade away, it should be made a perpetual harvest. If we were to practice the virtuous deeds, especially practice the emptiness and bodhicitta and renunciation, that would be a perpetuate benefit for ourselves for lifetimes and not just for 1 or 2 lifetimes. That could gain great benefits for ourselves. Moreover, he also uses the image of taking support of the human body as if it were a ship. Geshe Shabopa says that presently we have obtained a human body with its freedom and riches and met a spiritual teacher and connected with the Mahayana teachings. Now at this very time we must prepare for our future. Pontsog Rinpoche often would quote this. Now that we have already gained freedom and have already encountered the Mahayana teachings and great teachers as well, if we were to lose all of these favorable conditions, how could we ever gain the human body again? We would not have such a certainty of it. How would we be able to ever encounter such wonderful spiritual teachers or such wonderful Mahayana teachings? Because this world is so boundless. And if you were to be reborn as a tiny ant, or if you were to be reborn as some kinds of oceanic animals in the vast ocean, we see that there is such a density of sentient beings there as well. If we were to be reborn as those, then we won't be able to hear the names of the three jewels. That's quite pitiful. Now that we have encountered the spiritual teacher, and we don't really know if time passed by, if each of the generations would have wonderful teachers. I don't know if we will be able to encounter great teachers such as Daewoo Khyentse Rinpoche, Dongzhi Rinpoche, Phuntsho Rinpoche, Phunno Rinpoche, and so on and so forth. Because after a decade or two, we would never know if there would be spiritual teachers that would give wonderful teachings like them or would embody the Dharma like them. For that reason, we must prepare for our future lifetimes and get a firm footing in the direction of liberation and omniscience. Furthermore, the precious Dharma Lord Gyaltse Tokme states the following: since the freedoms and riches are so difficult to acquire, when you obtain them and make them meaningful. He then continues, in this way, therefore, learned one, without deceiving yourselves, it is essential you do not deceive yourselves, do not deceive the Dharma teachers or the Sangha members. It is not necessary for you to do that. Rather, you should practice the sacred Dharma correctly through authentically combining listening, reflecting, and meditating. Thus, make these freedoms and riches a meaningful gain. He also practiced this way himself. And then let's look at the next part concerning giving up your home, the source of the three poisons. In the shloka, it says, towards friends, attachment rages like a river, and towards enemies, the hatred blazes like fire. Therefore, it is the practice of the Bodhisattvas to give up that home, where the darkness of stupidity, of forgetting what to accept and reject, prevails. Well, the meaning is that if you were to stay in your homeland and try to practice the Dharma, your focus will naturally return to the beloved ones, your parents, due to the mutual deep affection, and companions due to attachment, and so forth. Hence, desirous attachment, raging like a river, will arise and carry one away from the stream of existence. Nowadays, I think children don't necessarily have lots of attachment to their parents anymore, but normally speaking, the worldly beings do have lots of attachment to their loved ones, to their family members and parents. The desirous attachments are just like a raging river that's very difficult to stop. Similarly, living in your hometown, the strong aversion felt towards the enemies cause anger to burn like fire, scorching the virtuous accumulations of oneself and others. At one's hometown, if one were to encounter the enemy, if one were to remember, oh, so-and-so slandered me in such a way, so-and-so treated my family member in such a way, and such a negative way, and was not good to my friends, and so on and so forth. So they would generate the scorching hatred towards them. Then a dense, dark stupidity also arises within oneself, and it will cause the mindfulness that correctly accepts the virtues which are to be adopted and rejects non-virtues which are to be abandoned, to degenerate and to be forgotten. Usually people would be able to practice at a Dharma center, but at the times of returning back to their hometown, they would watch TV and play with their pets and play with their cell phone and so on and so forth. Some of the family members at the time of looking at their relatives that's a monastic whose behavior is really no other than the lay practitioners, or no other than the worldly beings. They would not say anything directly to them, but in their minds they would have lots of dualistic thoughts about your inappropriate actions as well. They would probably say that, oh, it's fine, you can just relax and so on and so forth, but they will definitely have lots of dualistic thoughts. Therefore, to give up that homeland that naturally brings about an abundance of faults is the practice of all bodhisattvas. Their way of abandoning an unwholesome place, which is the root of attachment and aversion. Abandoning them is not just physically abandoning. Sometimes we see the older practitioners or the ones that's senior, they would still have lots of attachment to their family life, and they would keep calling them and saying, how is so-and-so? Is he engaging in the studies? How is my grandchild? How's my family? They would keep on asking those with their cell phones. Nowadays, your body, though, have parted from your homeland, if your mind is still there, then it is of not much of a difference. Maybe it would be better for you to stay home. And your family member would probably feel better to see you physically around them as well. Furthermore, from the sutra inspiring supreme intention, it is best to go 100 miles away from wherever there is entanglement and arguing. Don't remain and reside for even an instant where negative emotions prevail. In the verse, it was 100 yojanas, and last year we calculated it was 600 kilometers away, and that would be the distance from here to Chengdu. And then over here it says that wherever that would that would make you to generate more entanglement and argument and conflict, then it would be best for you to part ways from that place. So here it says that if one resides in one's homeland, a place that is a source of defects such as attachments and aversion, entanglements, arguments, conflicts, then it would be the best for you to part ways from that place. Just like the great masters of the past, they would then head to the secluded areas to engage in practices. One will fall under the power of negative emotions and be unable to practice the Dharma in those kinds of places. Therefore, it is taught that one must leave the place behind. In particular, leaving one's home to become a homeless renunciate, meaning having left behind all those friends who are the basis of the arising of attachments and also those enemies who are the objects of one's anger, one should follow in the footsteps of the Buddha. From the same sutra, it says that for what purpose do these entanglements arise? You own no field and likewise no business. You have no wife, no sons, no daughters, no household, and not even a gathering of friends. You have neither servants, maids, nor masters. Once you became ordained, don't engage in dispute. This part is mainly addressed to all the renunciates, the monastics. You have none of those stated, the wife, sons, daughters. You have no field. You have no property, no business, no household, no friends, no servants, maids, nor master, then you have no attachment. Why to engage in any entanglement or arguments? On one hand, we can see that it is very difficult for the monastics to give up all of those things that the worldly beings would attach to. We can see that the monastics are indeed quite great because they can give up all of those attachments. That's really wonderful. On the other, if a monastic were not to be able to give up on all of those, if simply they physically represent a monastic, but their minds are not have not taken that renunciation, then one would simply be a terrible monastic. The worldly beings have their reasons to hold on to things, to have attachments and to have arguments and entanglements, because they have a home, they have a household to support, they have their lives, and they have their emotional attachments and so on, and we completely understand it. But as monastics, if you were to generate jealousy and have lots of conflicts and accumulate properties, that is really inappropriate. Nowadays, I see that the Chinese monastics indeed do live in a rather humble lifestyle. And I think that's really wonderful. We should try our best to practice in such a way.
Sunam dai tamche zubanya tamna nibe jana pache stirga nansi ralong chobai zubin cholen choba choba